Hello and welcome to NewsClick. The assembly elections for 5 states got over on 7th of March and the fates have been logged in the EVM. We have seen the exit polls. The exit polls are giving a clear majority to BJP in Uttar Pradesh, in Uttarakhand. It's a close fight in Goa. They are going to get a clear majority in Manipur, and Punjab might switch to AAP. So this is what the exit polls right now are saying. Some exit polls also predict a tough fight between BJP and Congress in Goa, somewhere also in Manipur and also in Uttarakhand. But it seems that the BJP might have a clear majority in Uttar Pradesh. That is what the exit polls are saying. However, if we see the ground reports that reporters have done across the platforms in Uttar Pradesh or even different states, the issues of employment, inflation, stray cattle issue are some of the issues which were actually hampering people, and they were going to vote on these lines. BJP tried its best to polarize people in the name of Hindu and Muslim in many of these states. The rhetorics that we have seen in Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's speech, even for that matter Amit Shah, they have been continuously talking about how it's a fight between 80% and 20%. So let's not go into what exit polls are saying and let's wait for 10th of March for the official results to come. But what were the issues on which these elections were fought in all of these states? We take a look, we take a more grounded analysis of these issues. Today in the studio, I have with us my co-host Siddhant Ane. We have our reporter Pragya Singh, Ravi Kaushal, and also on the Zoom are joining us Saurav Sharma from Lucknow. And later, we might have a reporter from Imphal joining us, which is Grace. So I'll start this discussion today with questions from Ravi. Ravi, it looks like Punjab is heading towards a AAP victory as per the exit polls. But we have seen in Punjab there has been a lot of fight within the Congress. Congress took time to declare its chief ministerial candidate, while Aam Aadmi Party was always on the front foot when it comes to Punjab. Do you think that this assembly, this infighting within the Congress in Punjab is going to hamper their prospects in the state?
Well, Pranjal, as far as the Congress is concerned, we need to, it is quite correct that Punjab has this organization issues. There was constant fighting between Navjot Singh Sidhu and this Channi group. Apart from that, there was...
There was also Amrinder Singh in between.
Yeah, they lost thing, but there were also several other, few small factions within the Congress which were, let's say, vouching for each other. But what it appears that Congress actually effectively worked on it. By doing two things. One, it announced Channi, which was, I think, a very polarizing phenomenon in Punjab, given the largest shareholding of Dalits, which is about 32% in Punjab. And other thing is this, the central leadership also settled the question of leadership by, by going for Channi. Because, given from the maneuvers of Navjot Singh Sidhu, that which he was taking in between, it was very clear that he may be popular, but he doesn't have the political wisdom that is required for a senior.
And you think Channi has that political wisdom?
I think so.
What about Bhagwant Mann?
Bhagwant Mann is a very popular candidate with having, let's say, a clear base in Malwa region, which is the biggest region of Punjab, with, let's say, 60 more states there. So he is popular in Sangrur, he is popular in some parts
of... He's sitting MP from Sangrur.
Yeah, he is from Bhatinda and other parts as well. Now, but Bhagwant's problem is one thing, or the AAP's problem is this, that they borrowed 33% of their candidates from Akali Dal and Congress. And, the people would certainly be asking that if you are asking for a change, then why are you borrowing candidates from these parties? Now, another issue that the Dalits were asking was about the silence of Bhagwant Mann when Punjab saw a series of let's say massacres or for that, not massacres actually, but
Attacks.
confrontations between Dalits and Jats over the question of land. Because as per the law, the Dalits in Punjab should get 33% of the Shamlat land.
Right.
And Bhagwant was very silent on this issue.
But isn't what that's AAP's character is? They have been silent on most of the issues.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to ask a question. We're in an odd position for me to look at you and ask a question. When I'd gone to Punjab, two criticisms that we heard quite often. One is that what you said about no new faces, right? So, आप same लोग क्यों वापस लेके आ रहे हैं? इससे क्या बदलेगा? Or but still, the tide seems to have turned from let's say October, November, December to now. So, what has AAP done on the ground differently, in your opinion, that has led to these kind of exit poll declarations?
You see, एक चीज जो हमें थोड़ी सी समझ लेनी चाहिए वो ये है आपके कंटेक्स्ट में कि आपको कोई जो लोग हैं ना वो चॉइस से नहीं चुन रहे हैं. They are fed up with Congress. They are fed up with Akalis.
Lack of choice.
Yeah, and then there are no other alternates. So people are going for AAP in this way. जहाँ तक आपका सवाल है, आपने अपने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन पे और ओवरऑल भी जो है ग्राउंड पे उसने काम किया, जिसकी वजह से उसको जो है वो लोग मिले जिसके थ्रू हम कहें कि दे आर गार्नरिंग दिस थिंग. व्हाट इज मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट टू let's say note down is that Kisan Andolan certainly played a very important role in in mobilizing the public mandate about the change. Aam Aadmi Party is leading on that mood.
Despite not really helping with any parts of that agitation in Delhi itself, right?
Yeah.
So benefit उठा रहे हैं लेकिन.
Yeah.
So just on continuation with that, let's take a look at the reports that we have seen from Punjab. And as you have also reported in many of your videos and the reports that you have written for NewsClick, that issues of employment, issues of agriculture, these were basically missing from agenda of political parties. Then what are people going to vote on? I mean, that's a bigger question that we face today.
Well, this is a very interesting question. I was talking to Darshan Pal, the tallest leader among the SKM leadership. तो दर्शन पाल ने मुझसे कहा कि देखिए पंजाब की त्रासदी है कि यहाँ पे जो है बिना मुद्दों के चुनाव हो जाते हैं और लोग जीत भी जाते हैं. लेकिन जस्ट टू मैं ये कहूँ कि मैं मुक्तसर गया था ना, तो मुक्तसर में कुछ लड़कियाँ थी, बात कर रही थी, और हम जब इश्यूज़ की बात कर रहे हैं, एम्प्लॉयमेंट का इशू है, खेती का इशू है, तो मैंने बच्चे से ऐसे ही पूछ लिया, ये जो मतलब मैं कहूँ कि लड़की है, इसने बीएड पास किया है, बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स से ग्रेजुएशन पास की है, और शी इज़ टीचिंग एज अ टीचर इन वन ऑफ द स्कूल्स. आप इमेजिन कीजिए कि उसकी सैलरी क्या होगी, 3,500 रुपये.
This is basically the entire contractual system that we have witnessed across platforms, whether it's Madhya Pradesh, whether it's Uttar Pradesh. You have Shiksha Mitra in Uttar Pradesh, you have Samhita Shikshak in Madhya Pradesh. They are paid 2,500 rupees, 3,500 rupees and 4,500 rupees. I mean, if you teach till class 5th, you are being paid 2,500. If you teach till class 8th, you have 3,500, and if you go above, you have 4,500.
This was in the case of a private school. So खेती का जो संकट हम कहें, मतलब अगर आप ओवरऑल भी देख लें, हमने अलग अलग किसानों से बात की, अलग अलग फसलों को लेके, भैया फसलों के बारे में हमें बताइए ना, कि मतलब ये हमेशा से एक नैरेटिव कोट एंड कोट चलता रहा था ना कि कैश क्रॉप्स उगाइए, कैश क्रॉप्स उगाइए. उन्होंने हमें साफ बताया कि देखिए अगर हम वीट और पैडी के अलावा कुछ उगाते हैं आपको कुछ नहीं मिलेगा. वीट और पैडी का वो सेंट्रल प्रोक्योरमेंट है जिसके थ्रू वो सेंट्रल पूल में जाता है, वहाँ से आपको एक डेफिनेट एमएसपी मिल जाती है, उसके अलावा आपके पास कुछ नहीं है. और पैडी का प्राइमरी इशू ये है कि 1 किलो पैडी उगाने के लिए यू नीड टू स्पेंड 5,500 लीटर ऑफ वाटर, एंड दैट्स मेकिंग पंजाब अ डेजर्ट.
Right.
Ravi, one more question. Sorry, do we have time?
Yeah.
Last we were talking to our colleague Shivinder also yesterday. What is the scene with the Akalis? Because on the ground, तो उनके जो गढ़ हैं, वहाँ भी support गायब हो गया था at one point. अब क्या सीन है?
देखिए, अकालियों के बारे में इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ ये है कि उनको बहुत पहले पता चल गया था कि दिस इलेक्शन इज गोइंग टू बी टफ, तो उन्होंने तैयारी पहले से शुरू कर दी थी। दूसरा, एक जो चीज़ हम कहें स्पष्ट तौर पे, वो ये है कि अकालियों के पास उनका स्ट्रॉन्ग कार्डर बेस है जो लोगों को घरों से निकाल के बूथ तक ला सकता है। अब उस प्रोसेस में वो कितना डलवा पाएंगे अपने फेवर में, वो देखने वाली बात होगी। बट अकाली डिड वर्क ऑन देयर, let's see now.
All right, let's stop with Punjab on that note.
Okay.
I'll come to Pragya on this. So Pragya, I'll follow with the point that Ravi was raising about the Kisan agitation in general. How did it impact the politics in Punjab? You have covered Western UP, the Jat land, where I mean, if in UP there was a participation in farmers agitation, it was from that area.
Yes.
How do you think it's going to impact the voting share, voting percentage in that area? Because if we go by the exit polls, BJP seems to have edge even in that area.
Yes.
And the SPRLD alliance seems to be not doing so well in, as we call the Jat land.
Yes, according to the exit poll. Now, one of the things that is very clear, like you said right in the beginning, that the exit poll is a phenomenon or a feature of media which people have less and less faith in. They might be right, they might be correct, they might be wrong, but there is less faith. So that's why we see, a competition also between exit polls now, because somebody sees the exit poll, somebody becomes happy, somebody becomes sad. So in Western UP, I actually made 2 visits. One was in November, and the next visit to the same places and sometimes to the same people in February. So yes, there was a change. Obviously, they say that in UP the politics changes every 2 weeks, right? So of course there was a shift right after the. In fact, the farm laws were withdrawn while I was there.
Right.
So there was great celebration of this, and there was a great sense of victory. And you could hear very few, but still you could hear some people say, "देखो, अब तो कानून वापस ले लिया, अब क्यों नाराज हो?" But that was being contested by the others. So, for example, it's not that only Jats are farmers, but the Jats had spread very widely through that region that BJP is a terrible party, you should never vote for it because of the farm laws.
Right.
And many other things. It was not just this, but many other things were said, that they don't keep their promises, that they are over-centralizing, that in fact questions about democracy, the very nature of Indian state was being raised by these, Jat farmers. So, but the moment the law was withdrawn, some people started saying that देखो अब तो देखो सरकार ने जो हमने कहा था वो कर भी दिया. But people were responding back saying that no, till yesterday you were saying that nothing can be worse than BJP. So now how do you expect us to suddenly change? However, when you went back in February, there was definitely a sort of gradation. Now remember that UP is massive. We're talking about one region which is full of sub-regions. So in Bagpat, in Badot, in Shamli, in Kairana, you did find that a sort of same sort of anger against BJP as you shifted towards towards the highway, towards Muzaffarnagar city, towards the areas which were affected by riots in 2013. So there you found that, there was a certain softness coming in. We should not relate this softness to the fact that the issue has died out. We should relate this sense of change to the simple fact that the BJP has started actively campaigning, and they were sending signals to those areas where there had been violence, saying that हमने तुम्हें बचाया,
Right.
cases से बचाया. Now this is unrelated to farm laws. That anger would still exist, and I would also say that wherever people say that the Jats are voting against the BJP, right? Now it so happens that in India there is a identity of a farmer which the Jat is just representing.
So, Pragya, just 1 second, so that I'll just continue on
question,
that.
sorry.
I'll continue on that. So, just one thing. This is an important point you're raising about the riots that took place.
Yes.
Right. This area also has a big chunk of Muslim population.
Yes.
And we have seen the big farmers rally happening in Muzaffarnagar from where this riot originated. And after a long time, Ghulam Muhammad Jawla and Naresh Tikat coming together on a platform, raising slogans of Allahu Akbar and Jai Shri Ram on the same platform.
Right.
Har Har Mahadev.
And Har Har Mahadev. And basically giving a impression that this entire narrative of us versus them will not work in this area. But if we see at a exit poll report, this doesn't seem to have happened.
You
So
know-
what are the other? Communism was definitely an issue in this area. It has been an issue in this area since 2013. Sugarcane farmers is another issue. What are other similar issues in these areas?
Yes.
Just continuing, same question, probably the same answer. Speaking to a few Jat women actually, who are also voting perhaps in this election, who knows? They were saying that Jayant has gone and set up an alliance with the same guys who trouble us, harass us, etc., etc., make us feel unsafe.
I get your point. So I'll try to explain what happened in Western UP with what happens in Saharanpur. Now Saharanpur doesn't have a very big Jat population. It did not have that kind of participation in the farm agitation either, right? But over there is a very large number of Muslims who live there. So you can say that in Indian society, this is a feature that there is a natural kind of obvious polarization that you do not see in Western UP any longer. It has not finished overnight. It did not finish suddenly because of the farm movement. It has been happening over time as people realize that this doesn't work for us. And then the farm movement actively worked to end the polarization. So that we do not see, at least, the polarization that pre-existed, before the last government and which pre-existed the BJP's arrival. We will always find some BJP supporters. We will always find some people who believe in Hindutva or who do not like to coexist with Muslims. But that polarization which was spread by the politics, definitely it is over. Second thing, I have visited so many households. I could not find a single home where the Ujjwala cylinder was being used. It was half full, it was empty, or it was full but it had been kept for a rainy day. I should correct myself. Actually, I met one family, but they also had a chulha, right? So now you tell me that what is the point of predicting an electoral victory based on a scheme where you're saying that you have given people. Second thing, nobody I asked ever told me, not one person, not one household ever told me on their own that yes, the BJP has done this or that for us. When I asked them, they said, nahi, sarkar ne to kuch bhi nahi kiya. And then when you further question them that, but look, you must be getting ration. They say, हाँ, ration मिल रहा है, हम झूठ नहीं बोलेंगे, हमको बताना चाहिए कि हमें ration मिल रहा है.
Right.
Now, so how do you explain the exit poll in this context? You explain the exit poll by simply saying that maybe when a journalist goes to visit a place, they can only see a selected few places. Or you can say that the exit polls are perhaps going to have to correct themselves tomorrow. Who knows?
I'll take it from here to Saurav in Lucknow. Welcome to NewsClick, Saurav. As we were discussing just before this panel discussion started, that how what basically SP lagged behind was in the infrastructure and the organization, right? Can you shed some more light on it? I mean, where did SP do things wrong and where BJP had an upper hand?
BJP had an upper hand in everything. To be very honest, Samajwadi Party started very late. And see, what happened in 2019 and 2017, the family feud in the Samajwadi Party was on road. And even this time, Akhilesh and Shivpal shared the stage, or a picture of them went viral on social media only in the last phases of the elections. So it gave a clear message that there was still no unity in the family. And I was speaking with the insiders in Samajwadi Party and also with this Shivpal's gig. So they were telling me that Shivpal is not getting any clarity from Akhilesh on how many seats is Shivpal's party is going to contest and things like that. Second, there was one issue which was which no one could जिसपे कोई खेल ही नहीं पाया. No one could play on that. That issue was unemployment.
Right.
If you seen a pattern कि पिछले 1.5 सालों में, मतलब in the last 2 years I will say, there had been a beaten charge ऑन पीपल, ऑन एस्पायरिंग टीचर्स, रेलवे जॉब वैकेंसी के लिए जो प्रोटेस्ट करते थे, और यूपी का कोई एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट ऐसा नहीं छूटा है जहां पे बेटन चार्ज ना हुआ हो। तो यूथ्स में बहुत एक बड़ा गुस्सा था, रिसेंटमेंट था कि हमें नौकरियां नहीं मिल रही हैं, हम पे रोज डंडे बरसाए जाते हैं। ये इतना बड़ा जब आपके पास एक मुद्दा था, एक टॉपिक था जिसपे आप बैंक कर सकते थे, पूरा पोल प्लैंक हो सकता था आपके लिए, यू प्लेड ऑन दैट पोल प्लैंक इन द फिफ्थ फेज। जब फिफ्थ फेज की पोलिंग हो रही थी, उससे पहले 4 फेजेस की पोलिंग में कहीं डिस्कशन में नहीं आया। जब गोरखपुर में आया तब आप बोल रहे हो कि बाबा ने नौकरी नहीं दी है। यहाँ पे समाजवादी पार्टी थोड़ा सा लैग कर गई। फिर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात करते हैं, सोशल मीडिया कैंपेन्स, वेयर वर दिस सोशल मीडिया कैंपेन्स? आई वाज इन मुजफ्फरनगर, खतौली में प्रज्ञा भी थी वहां पे, खतौली वगैरह में। तो वो फर्स्ट 2 फेजेस में जब बिजनौर तक इलेक्शन पहुंचा, तब डोर टू डोर कैंपेनिंग केवल अमित शाह ने की थी। वेयर वर जयंत चौधरी, वेयर वॉज अखिलेश यादव? तो उस टाइम पे नहीं हुई। देन आई वुड डिसएग्री विद व्हाट प्रज्ञा सेड कि जो एक पॉलिटिकल पोलराइजेशन वेस्ट यूपी में हुआ था वो नहीं हो पाया। ठीक है, फार्मर प्रोटेस्ट ने उसे कुछ डाइल्यूट किया, बट जो एक ब्रिज का काम समाजवादी पार्टी और जयंत चौधरी को वहां जाकर करना चाहिए था, जो काम ग्राउंड पर मोहम्मद जौला कर रहे थे, राकेश टिकैत कर रहे थे। राकेश टिकैत का मैं स्टैंड बहुत क्लियर नहीं मानता, वो किधर पलट जाए बेस्ड ऑन हिज पास्ट एक्सपीरियंस। सो मैं उस पे, लेकिन गुलाम मोहम्मद जौला ने जो काम किया, यूनाइट किया, उस समय अगर समाजवादी पार्टी का काडर या आरएलडी का काडर वहां पे होता तो ये यूनिटी फिर से, एक सोशल हार्मनी वहां पे बन जाती, और यहाँ पे अलायंस को एक एज मिल जाता बीजेपी के ऊपर। क्योंकि ये वही केन बेल्ट है, मैं इसे जाट बेल्ट नहीं बोलूंगा क्योंकि जाट पॉपुलेशन इधर मथुरा साइड में ज्यादा है। ये केन बेल्ट में एक बहुत बड़े प्रॉब्लम है। केन बेल्ट में अगर आप जाइए तो केन बेल्ट में कैंसर एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि जितना शुगर मिल है, पेपर मिल इंडस्ट्री है, यहाँ का जितना पानी निकलता है वो कंटेमिनेट करता है, काली नदी वहीं पे। कैंसर की एक बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है जिसपे किसी ने ध्यान नहीं दिया। केन ड्यूज, ये गवर्नमेंट जो बीजेपी गवर्नमेंट है, ये बड़ा क्लेम किया है, बहुत हाई क्लेम्स है, टॉल क्लेम्स है इनके, कि हमने केन ड्यूज 20 दिन में हमने पर्ची का निपटारा कर दिया। अब जाके देखिए वहां 4-4 सालों पहले की पर्ची जो कटी है इसी गवर्नमेंट की, उसके अभी ड्यूज नहीं पूरे हुए हैं, उसकी वजह से गुस्सा था। उन मुद्दों को नहीं उठाया गया। आप वहां बात करते हैं कि हम ये कर देंगे, वो कर देंगे, एम्प्लॉयमेंट देंगे, दुनिया भर की बात की। फिर जब ग्राउंड पे मैं था, मैं बिजनौर में था, मैं खतौली में था, कुटबा कुटबी में था, वहां पे एक मैसेज बीजेपी ने बड़ा क्लियर कर दिया कि मुजफ्फरनगर दंगे तो समाजवादी पार्टी ने कराए थे। जहां पे इनको एज लेना था समाजवादी पार्टी और अलायंस को, वहां पे ये बीजेपी का जो एक स्ट्रॉन्ग साइकोलॉजिकल, इन्होंने जिस तरीके से प्ले किया लोगों की साइकोलॉजी के साथ, वहां पे ये फेल हो गए थोड़ा सा। तो ये कुछ मुद्दे थे जहां पे बीजेपी को अपर हैंड था और समाजवादी पार्टी कुछ काम नहीं कर पाई।
सौरभ, ये तो हो गई वेस्ट की बात, पर एक इलाका है पूर्वांचल उत्तर प्रदेश में, आपका बुंदेलखंड, रोहेलखंड है, यहाँ पे भी एक मतलब एग्रेरियन क्राइसिस जो है वो बहुत तेजी से एक बड़ा मुद्दा बन के उभरा था फार्मर्स इरिटेशन के बाद। क्या इन मुद्दों पे जो है वो वोटिंग नहीं हुई है?
देखिए, अभी वोटिंग हुई है या नहीं हुई है ये तो 10 तारीख को पता चलेगा, कौन जीत रहा है उसके हिसाब से। लेकिन बुंदेलखंड का जो रीजन है, मैं आपको बताऊं, बुंदेलखंड में हम और न्यूज़क्लिक के कैमरामैन, हम 4-5 लोग करीबन 1.5 हफ्ते वहीं पे टिके हुए थे, और हमने 20 गांव वहां पे, मतलब अब ये सतना बॉर्डर तक, एमपी तक हम चले गए काम करते हुए। स्ट्रे कैटल का एक बहुत बड़ा इशू था। इतना गुस्सा था लोगों में कि जो एक टाइम पे बीएसपी बेल्ट होती थी बुंदेलखंड में, 13 कंस्टिट्यूएंसीज आती हैं, वो बीएसपी बेल्ट कहा जाता था। वो उसमें भाजपा हो गई फिर 9 सीटों को लाके लास्ट इलेक्शंस में। और उसके बाद इस बार ऐसा लग रहा था, जिस तरीके से हम किसानों से बात कर रहे थे, किसान रो रहे थे कि हमें रात रात भर जगना पड़ता है, इतना कर्ज ले रखा है। और उस ये एग्रेरियन क्राइसिस केवल स्ट्रे कैटल तक नहीं था, ये जो डीएपी मिलती है, जो खाद मिलती है, जो यूरिया मिलता है, इसकी भी शॉर्टेज है। हमने इस पे भी बात की लोगों से, तो इतना गुस्सा लग रहा था कि ऐसे लग रहा था कि ये 13 की 13 सीटें इस बार अलायंस को चली जाएंगी। तो अब ये तो 10 तारीख को ही पता चलेगा कि वो 13 सीटें कहां जा रही है। और फिर अगर हम आते पूर्वांचल, ईस्टर्न यूपी में, ईस्टर्न यूपी में एग्रेरियन क्राइसिस है, लेकिन ईस्टर्न यूपी का जो सबसे बड़ा वोट शेयर है वो है रिवराइन कम्युनिटी, जो लोअर ओबीसीज होती हैं, सॉरी फॉर द वर्ड लोअर ओबीसी, ये जो शाक्य, कुशवाहा, रायकवर, निषाद, मल्ला, ये लोग जो होते हैं, इनके साथ बहुत सारे इश्यूज हैं, क्योंकि ये मछली पालते हैं तो उसकी लीज नहीं हो पाती है पॉन्ड की, इनके पास जो खेती है ये सब बटाई की खेती है, दे आर रॉयट्स, दे आर नॉट फार्मर्स, दे आर रॉयट्स। तो जब इंक्लीमेंट वेदर कंडीशंस आती हैं तब इनको मुआवजा नहीं मिलता है, कंपनसेशन नहीं मिल पाता है। तो इस बार इशू ईस्टर्न यूपी में तो बहुत ज्यादा था, बट सिंस इट्स अ बीजेपी स्ट्रॉन्ग होल्ड, आई वुड से, because of the big leaders and the big mafios coming from those areas, वहां पे एक जो सबसे बड़ा फैक्टर वो काम कर रहा था वो ये था कि हमने बुलडोजर चलवा दिया। You would be very surprised to listen to this conversation. I was in Sanjarpur. Sanjarpur ये वो constituency है जहाँ पे एक है राजीव यादव करके हैं, वो कंटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, इंडिपेंडेंट कैंडिडेट है। वो एक टेररिज्म का मुद्दे पे कंटेस्ट कर रहे हैं कि जिन लोगों को फेक चार्जेस लगा के टेररिज्म का जेल में डाल देते हैं। वहां पे मुस्लिम डोमिनेटेड एरिया है, मैं पैटर्न समझना चाह रहा था कि कैसे वोटिंग होगी, आप लोग क्या करोगे। तो जब वो ग्रुप में बैठे थे ना, तो वो ग्रुप में रिक्शे वाले वो कह रहे हैं, रिक्शे वाले थे, कोई डेली वेजर्स थे, एंड ये वो लोग हैं जो वोट करने जाते हैं, ये बोल रहे हैं कि हम तो अलायंस को वोट देंगे, हमारे लिए कुछ नहीं हुआ।
So, one follow-up question on this. You talked about lower OBCs. We have seen that the social arithmetic that the BJP did in 2017, SP was able to implement it in 2022. Is it not going to work in favor of SP?
I think it will work in favor of SP, especially the Maurya factor, because Maurya votes float a lot. निषाद फ्लोट करे ना करे, बिकॉज ओपी राजभर को कोई सीरियस लीडर नहीं मानता। उनकी स्पीचेस आप सुनिए, वो जिस तरीके से बोलते थे कि हमारा तो सारे माफियाओं से कनेक्शन है, फिर बीजेपी काउंटर कर देती कि आप तो माफिया को ही लेके आ रहे हैं, आप कैसे गरीबों के हितों की बात करेंगे। तो मौर्य फैक्टर बहुत इन्फ्लुएंस करेगा और मौर्य वोट्स जाएंगे। लेकिन अभी जिस तरीके से ये लोग थोड़ा सा इम्पेशेंट हो गए हैं, मतलब दे आर रनिंग आउट ऑफ पेशेंस, पिछले 2 दिनों में जो समाजवादी पार्टी कर रही है, द काइंड ऑफ ट्वीट्स एंड द काइंड ऑफ सोशल मीडिया पोस्ट वो जैसे आ रहे हैं, तो ऐसा लग रहा है कि वोट शायद ना फ्लोट करें। लेकिन मौर्य वोट पिछले आप 5 विधानसभा इलेक्शन देख लीजिए, बहुत ज्यादा फ्लोट करता है, और स्वामी प्रसाद मौर्य इज द बिगेस्ट मौर्य लीडर इन यूपी। तो इनके वोट्स फ्लोट करेंगे, ये तो समाजवादी पार्टी को प्रॉफिट देगा। लेकिन निषाद, मल्ला, रायकवर, शेख, ये कहां जाएंगे, ये थोड़ा सा भी वो लग रहा है, क्योंकि फ्री का राशन जो है ना, वो झोला कोविड टाइम से बहुत काम किया है।
Ask one. Sorry.
I'll just continue with one more question and then Siddhan, you can continue. Sort of migration is also a big issue in Uttar Pradesh. And if we see migration and unemployment together, BJP should have been really on a back foot on these issues. Can you shed some more light on it?
So we went to Jhansi, we went to Manikpur, we were in Lucknow. Our station was in Lucknow, and we were in almost every district of the Eastern UP. So कोई एक ऐसा डिस्ट्रिक्ट नहीं है जहां हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि यहाँ पे माइग्रेशन नहीं, यहाँ एम्प्लॉयमेंट की प्रॉब्लम नहीं, अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट की प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। ये इशू इतना बड़ा था, जैसे मैंने स्टार्टिंग में ही बोला था कि इस पे अपोजिशन खेल सकता था, दे कुड हैव रियली गॉट एन एज ओवर द बीजेपी, बट नो वन रेज्ड इट। माइग्रेशन का इशू इतना बड़ा है कि we were told in Manikpur that over 13,000 people from the district travel every day. They move out of their district to other states. लेकिन लोगों को पता तब चलेगा ना जब वो मतलब ये मुद्दे रेस किए जाएंगे। अभी तो ये हो रहा था, जैसे प्रज्ञा बोल रही है कि कोई एक घर नहीं उनको मिला जहां पे उज्ज्वला का सिलेंडर उनको ना मिला हो, लेकिन वो यूज हो रहा है, नहीं हो रहा है काम। लेकिन बुंदेलखंड आप जाइए तो वहां पे एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग कन्वर्सेशन था। मैंने पूछा, ये हमारे वीडियो पे भी आया है, कि उज्ज्वला का तो आपको काम सिलेंडर मिला है और आपने भराया ही नहीं है, क्यों? तो बोली हमारे पास पैसे नहीं है। तो मैंने कहा पैसे नहीं है तो आपने रख क्यों रखा है? तो उन्होंने बोला कि फ्री में मिला है, कम से कम बेटी के दहेज में तो चला जाएगा, भाजपा ने गृहस्थी दे दी है हमको। So you see how they played with the psychology of a common man, the poor man, the voters who actually stand in queue in the scorching heat to vote. और ये सब मुद्दे थे जिसपे आप काम नहीं कर पाए. फिर देखिए, आप सबसे बड़ा देखिए बीजेपी का मैनिफेस्टो, दैट इज अ कॉपी ऑफ कांग्रेस मैनिफेस्टो. हम 3 सिलेंडर फ्री देंगे, because they failed on the ground. BJP failed to deliver on the ground, but then there was no one to raise these voices.
Yeah, I think the one thing we probably all agree on is that the BJP will be the single largest party and form the government in Uttar Pradesh. That I think.
I would not go on that. Let's not make
Okay. No. Sure. But the question is, Saurabh, yeah, all of the issues you were talking about from the agrarian crisis standpoint are connected to the environment and what's happening with climate change, etc., etc. So from a both governance standpoint, what the government has done over the past 5 years and any kind of forward-looking plan that exists to counter any of this, is it even a part of any conversation, even at a policy level?
No. Who knows about climate change? If you go on the ground, if you talk with the people who make their food on the cow dung cakes, do they know about the climate change thing? One very interesting thing, and we reported it. I'm happy that. So in this Basti district, almost 8 of the villages, they boycotted polling. Why? Because they protested against the illegal mining. उनको लग रहा था कि इसके बहुत एडवर्स इफेक्ट होने वाले हैं, आने वाले समय में हमारे पूरे गांव में बाढ़ रहेगी. सो थोड़ा सा तो अवेयरनेस आई किसी एक गांव में, बस्ती बहुत बैकवर्ड एरिया है, तो थोड़ा सा वहां क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात हुई. अदरवाइज आप यहाँ पे
मतलब maybe they don't understand the terminology, but I think people on the ground are very aware of how these things are impacting their lives, so that
people know the impact. लेकिन पराली जलाने को आप अभी भी मना करोगे तो लोग आपसे लड़ जाएंगे. स्टबल बर्निंग यूपी से बहुत बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूशन है, स्पेशली लखीमपुर बेल्ट से, सब वेस्ट यूपी. लेकिन स्टबल बर्निंग जो होती है वो बेसिकली लखीमपुर, गोरखपुर, इस बेल्ट से होती है. तो लोगों को इम्पैक्ट तो पता है कि उनकी लाइफ पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होने वाला है, बट दिस इज नॉट अ टॉकिंग पॉइंट. मतलब वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि इलेक्शंस आर स्टिल फॉट ऑन हिंदू मुसलमान.
I'll come back to you on the Lakhimpur issue. While we have Grace from Imphal joining us on this panel discussion. Welcome to NewsClick, Grace. I'll hand it over to Siddhant from here to take it forward.
Yeah, hi Grace. Can you hear us? We are not getting your audio yet, so.
There seems to be some technical difficulty. We are not able to.
Yeah, she's here now.
Now we are able to. Yeah.
Hi Grace, I don't know if you were able to follow any of the discussion we were having earlier, but essentially we're looking at patterns in terms of how people, from your perspective of reporting on the ground, have voted in your state overall. So can you start by maybe giving us some kind of context into who are the main players, because Manipur is seeing a multipolar election. There are at least 5 significant parties to be considered.
Yes, true. Like there are 13 political parties, but also and a lot of independent candidates, because very prominent party called the Manipur People's Party somehow could not contest from this contest in this particular election because of a pending court case. So the candidates are coming in as independent for that particular party. So we do have the 13 plus these independent candidates, but more prominently 5 parties. And among them, what we anticipated before the polling is slightly different from what we see now after we have finished the repoll, because there's a lot of force at play. One is because we're a conflict region. 2 is because the government have their mercenaries to utilize these people, the surrendery militants in the hill areas. And the way they are playing out has completely manipulated the voting patterns. So So what we initially calculated and analyzed before the beginning of the election has changed after the repoll. So that being the reason, I think the results will favor the BJP, because the BJP have used a lot of different form of manipulation in the voting pattern. And that being the reason, if you look at our average, our turnout, it's 89 point, it's almost 90%. And that 90% it's so abnormal. So that itself shows, and if you look at the repoll percentages, I think, what is the report? The repoll percentage is only 68%. So when there is fairness, there is only 68.5%. But otherwise, if you look at the average, it's 89.24. So that itself shows like how manipulated it is. And that has always been the pattern. It's nothing new this time. In some of the constituencies, it's slightly better this time, though. But because of the missing reporting in the earlier elections, especially from the hill areas, we are not able to see this manipulation coming out in the national media. But somehow this time, I hope we'll get some attention so that the pattern will improve in the later elections.
Right. As far as the BJP is concerned, Grace, a couple of major issues that they didn't take a stand on in Manipur, which affect, I guess, if you consider both a wide range of the population. One is the new Hill Areas Committee ADC bill, which actually, so in the Manipur legislature, there is a Hill Areas Committee which comprises 20 hill districts of the state, and they sort of have a kind of veto right over any legislation that impacts their land holding, etc., just for a bit of background. So one is that, and the other is AFSPA. So while on the one hand, they are claiming that the state is now a peaceful state, on the other hand, there's no conversation around AFSPA, and we've seen the kind of deployment of central and other security forces while the election was on.
See, that's the contradiction that I'm trying to say. One is they're completely silent on AFSPA in the manifesto. And two is like definitely disappointed the hill population, which is the 20 constituency, by not tabling the ADC bill. But despite that, if you look at the exit polls that are coming in, if you look at the results, it's still showing a very high chances for BJP. So this is the contradiction that I'm trying to say, that despite not performing at all, despite doing nothing, despite having nothing in their manifesto, they are still coming back. And the reason, that's why the reason has to be manipulation. Otherwise, how would BJP come back, especially in the hills? We see no reason for them to flourish. And if you look at the constituency where they are definitely going to get, then it is those constituencies which are extremely remote, and which is also dominated by the surrendery militants.
Both state and non-state actors essentially dominate what happens there.
So that's it. We have 5 constituency out of the 60 which are straight fights. And these straight fights are between the Congress and the BJP, except for one in Chandal. The rest of the 4 are between Congress and BJP. So it reflects that other parties are not interested in taking the BJP hat on anymore, because we know what kind of forces will be involved. So it's except for the Congress, which we still appreciate, because at least they are taking the BJP on these straight fights in these 4 constituencies. In Chandal will be a very interesting.
Grace, I think what we can do is, Grace, we can keep some of the details of individual constituencies and such for our later show in the afternoon, where we'll be looking specifically at what's happening in Manipur, in Goa, and in Uttarakhand. So breaking away from UP's domination of the political conversation a little bit. Has the seizures in Manipur this election cycle, Grace, have been about 4 times the amount that we've seen in 2017. right? So alongside an upping of incidents of pre-poll and polling violence, we've also seen a lot more seizures from government agencies. Is drugs an issue that, of course, it's an issue that is impacting people, but is it an issue that's being talked about or voted on?
Yeah, definitely. Like in the last election, the seizure was less than 40 crore. This time, even by the 22nd of February, that is 1 week before the election, the seizure have already crossed 160 crore, which is like 4 times. That is even before the election. So this reflects the kind of unfair means that everyone is, I would say, across the political parties, that they're trying to use to this thing to manipulate the electors. So it's so unfortunate. Of course, we live in the Golden Triangle, and this has always been the drug route, and then we have lost a generation to this drug issue, and we still struggle with that. But still, then it plays out more aggressively during the election. And this election, if you look at the size of the seizure, which is 4 times, which has increased 4 times compared to the last seizure, then it's extremely concerning. And the other thing is, this time we're actually trying to use more women in the even from the government side. So we have actually 60 polling stations that are exclusively manned by women. What was extremely unfortunate was in one of the polling stations which are manned by women in Ukhrul Khambasam, there a petrol bomb, a kerosene bomb, was thrown into the vehicle where the polling officers were seated. 2 lady polling officers are injured. They are still hospitalized. And this is the kind of sin that's happening not only among the voters, but also to the polling officers and the polling lady officers. And so we are very concerned. We are very concerned because we still anticipate more violence. Before the start of this election, we have already, there's this group called Youth Collective Manipur. They have already documented 46 cases of violence related to this election, and we have seen a lot of that. Even yesterday, somebody one non-state actor, died. I think it's related to election because it was at the polling. It was very close to the repoll in Senapati district. So
Right.
we have seen firing at candidates on the eve of election, 1 day before the elections, and we have seen people running away with EVMs, and these are BJP supporters running away with EVMs. The army has shot at them. One is severely injured. One is One was shot at the spot itself. So we have seen how outrageous the BJP workers are, also because they have the support of the government, and the way it's playing out without any impunity. This is just crazy, and we anticipate so much more, and we're extremely concerned about how it's this thing playing out.
Right.
Thank you, Grace, for your inputs. We'll come back to you again. Just picking up from where Grace was talking about drug issue, I'd like to come to Ravi on Punjab. So drug has been a big issue in Punjab forever and ever. We have seen how the youth, also because unemployment's there. So, I mean, both can be interlinked very easily. Can you shed some more light on that? I mean, how is drug an issue? Because if you see AAP's entire campaign, it's fine, they have not spoken about unemployment, they have not spoken about agrarian crisis, but one issue that they have continuously talked about is a drug issue. So can you shed some more light on that?
Pranjal, when we look at the drugs issue in Punjab, it is more in the Majha region, which is the religious belt of the Punjab. Starting from Pathankot, then Amritsar, Tarantaran, Fazilka, Firozpur. This region is there. So there are 2 issues in it. One is certainly about the drug consumption, but before coming to that, we need to also see the implication of drug smuggling. So what we heard from these the farmers to whom we were talking, so farmers were suggesting that the drones fly from Pakistan land. They come here, they drop the drugs, and the peddlers would pick it up. लेकिन अगर आर्मी अलर्ट है या फिर सिक्योरिटी एजेंसीज अलर्ट हैं और उन्होंने रोक दिया या फिर वो ड्रग वहाँ से छोड़ के वो भाग गया, ड्रग जिसकी ज़मीन में गिरा है ना, वो he'll be under the problem. He'll be questioned for hours, he may be arrested. And farmers were like कि हमारी क्या गलती है यार कि अगर वहाँ से ड्रोन उड़ा के कोई मेरे खेत में डाल गया तो इज इट माई फॉल्ट कि मैं जो है इस बॉर्डरिंग एरिया में रह रहा हूँ। एक दूसरा ये बात सही है कि आम आदमी पार्टी ने ड्रग्स वाले इशू को जो कैंपेन बनाया उसमें विक्रम सिंह मजीठिया को भी घसीटने की कोशिश की, बाद में माफ़ी भी मांगनी पड़ी कि भैया हम
माफ़ी तो आम आदमी पार्टी कई बार मांग रही है
मतलब कि हमें बचती है, हमें कोर्ट केस नहीं लगे ठीक है, लेकिन मतलब क्लियरली हम जिसे कहें कि एक प्लान तो उन्होंने बना दिया था कि भैया अकालीज और ये इन सब का जो है मिली भगत है और उसके तहत पूरा हुआ है। ड्रग्स के बारे में एक चीज़ है पंजाब की प्रांजल की, हम पंजाब के कई जगहों पे गए और एक चीज़ है कि मतलब लोगों में ना ये एक ऑनर वाला इशू है अभी भी कि भैया और ड्रग्स से हमने कई घर देखे, मतलब एक बंदा चौक पे खड़ा है, वो बता रहे देखिए उस घर में जो है एक लड़का मरा है, इस घर में लड़का मरा है, इस घर में लड़का मरा है। जब हम उन घर में जाते हैं कि हमें ड्रग्स पे बात करनी है, नहीं नहीं साड़ा मुंडा नहीं हो रहा है, गलत बोल रहे हैं। तो इस तरीके का एक सोशल तरीके का, बट यस it's more sort of.
There's another issue that I want to raise vis-a-vis Punjab. Drugs is an issue, but you also filed a report where we talked about how the neighboring districts to the border have lost lot of trade and business, right? Amritsar,
Which otherwise should be thriving.
Which
actually.
otherwise should be thriving. So, I mean, that's also an issue, and BJP has been continuously pitching issue of nationalism in Punjab. Although I mean personally, I think BJP has.
Fortunately, the BJP is irrelevant in the state of
irrelevant
Punjab,
in
so
the
we
state
don't
of
have to
Punjab.
even.
But does this issue of nationalism, border security, business in the border areas, is it impacting elections?
It may be impacting election in the sense that BJP would be thrashed badly on these issues. One, given the fact that the permission that they gave to BSF, that they can come till 50 kilometers from the border, and they can, investigate any of the families. They can investigate any person if they feel any security issues. So one thing that I want to note down here is कि आई वॉज इन फिरोजपुर गया वहाँ पे, तो फिरोजपुर में मैंने पाया कि मैंने कहा कि क्या इशू है, मतलब क्या दिक्कत है आपको ना कि आप जो है बॉर्डर से 50 किलोमीटर दूर तक आ सकती है, आदमी आपसे बातचीत ही तो करेगी। उनका इशू प्रांजल ये था कि देखिए जब हमारे इलाके की लोकल पुलिस आती है तो हम उनको जानते हैं और हम उनको जानते हैं, अगर हमारा बंदा उन्होंने नहीं छोड़ा तो हम उनके पास जा सकते हैं कि आप बताइए कि किस चार्जेस पे है, क्या लीगल प्रोसीडिंग्स है। जब बीएसएफ उठाती है तो हमें पता नहीं चलता कि उन्हें कहाँ ले जा रहे हैं। एक दूसरा जो आप व्यापार वाला जो इशू कह रहे हो, द इशू अबाउट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द ट्रेड इशू, पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान का जो है एक ट्रेड चलता रहा था विच गोज थ्रू इंटीग्रेटेड चेक पोस्ट। अब यहाँ पे अटारी में जो ये पूरा चेक पोस्ट है, इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ने 150 करोड़ की मदद से ये पूरा जो है बनाया है यहाँ पे, ताकि इंडिया और पाकिस्तान का ट्रेड हो। इंडिया और पाकिस्तान का ट्रेड प्रांजल दोनों के लिए फ़ायदेमंद था। ऐसा नहीं था कि हम मतलब हमने जो है पाकिस्तान को मोस्ट फेवर्ड नेशन का दर्जा दे रखा है क्योंकि मतलब हमारा पड़ोसी मुल्क है। हमारे उनके बीच में ट्रेड का हमें सीधा फ़ायदा ये था कि हमें लगभग आधे रेट पे सीमेंट मिल जाता था जो हमारी इंडस्ट्रीज़ को चाहिए, हमें जो है जिप्सम मिल जाता था जो बहुत ज़रूरी है, रॉक सॉल्ट जो है पाकिस्तान का पूरी दुनिया में मशहूर है और हमें मिलता था। तो एक इशू ये था। दूसरा ये था कि क्योंकि ये ट्रेड होता था इससे बहुत सारे लोगों को रोज़गार मिलता था। एज इन ढाबे वाले हैं, हमने ढाबे वालों से बात की, एक ढाबे वाले ने कहा कि भैया मेरे पास 35 लोग थे, अब एक भी नहीं, मैंने सबको निकाल दिया क्योंकि यहाँ पर ट्रेड ही नहीं। जब ट्रेड नहीं है तो लोग नहीं आते, रुकते नहीं है, खाना नहीं खाते और घूमने नहीं आते। फिर प्लस में कोविड की वजह से यहाँ पे जो ये बीटिंग सेरेमनी होती थी वो भी बंद कर दी, तो लोग 20-25 हज़ार जो आते थे ओवरऑल देखने के लिए वो भी नहीं आ रहे हैं। तो वहाँ पे हुआ है कि ड्राइवर्स, ट्रक ड्राइवर्स, रिपेयर करने वाले, पेंटिंग करने वाले, पल्लेदारी करने वाले, जो लोडिंग और अनलोडिंग का काम करते हैं, ये सब लोग जो हैं मतलब पूरी तरीके से आउट ऑफ जॉब हैं, इनके पास कुछ नहीं है। पंजाब में बॉर्डरिंग स्टेट होने की वजह से सेंटर ने बहुत लंबे समय तक जो है जो एग्रो इंडस्ट्रीज़ की मांग थी पंजाब की कि पंजाब को एग्रो इंडस्ट्री दीजिए ताकि जो है प्रॉस्पर कर पाए, वो है नहीं। इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ प्रांजल, एक और चीज़ समझने वाली है ट्रेड को लेके कि पंजाब में 2 जगह हैं, एक पट्टी है और एक माखू है। इन दोनों के बीच की दूरी है तकरीबन 26 किलोमीटर। पंजाब हमेशा से कहता रहा है कि हमें जो है इन दोनों के बीच में 26 किलोमीटर के लिए रेलवे लाइन दे दीजिए ताकि हमारा माल जो है बड़े आराम से बॉम्बे पहुंच जाएगा। अब इस 26 किलोमीटर की लाइन ना होने की वजह से इनको 250 किलोमीटर का और सफ़र तय करना पड़ता है, विच मेक्स इट डिफिकल्ट फॉर द ट्रेडर्स टू ट्रेड देयर।
इट्स अ लॉस सिचुएशन फॉर देम।
तो ओवरऑल जो है प्रांजल, दोनों ही मुद्दों पे जो आपने बात की ना, चाहे ड्रग्स वाला है चाहे उस वाले पे, अगर बीजेपी का हम बात करें तो लोग जो है काफ़ी खफा है उनसे और ये काफ़ी ज़्यादा जो है नुकसान देने वाला है।
शुक्रिया रवि। प्रज्ञा, फाइनल कमेंट्स फ्रॉम यू ऑन, as we've discussed and as Saurav was also pointing out that SP could have done better if they would have put their acts together and they would have started campaigning much ahead of what they started
Yes,
doing.
Pranjal.
But this, I mean, if you have to give your final comments on, okay, these were the issues, this is what should have forced people to vote them for this party on these issues, but this did not happen, or it happened, we'll see on 10th of March. But what would be your final comments on it?
So Pranjal, in the last election, the Samajwadi Party left with the impression that they had peaked too soon. So this time they started early. Now with the exit poll out, and even earlier people were saying, oh, you peaked too early. The second thing that I really want to point out is the Muslim vote. Now the Muslims of Uttar Pradesh do not vote for the BJP. So that does not take away anything. Where they vote now does not take away anything or add anything to the BJP's kitty. The big question here is that after the Muslims and the BJP's core voters, which tend to be very solidly behind the BJP, the rest of the population, where did they go? That's where the BJP says our schemes worked. That's where earlier their Hindutva used to work. Now I don't think that the schemes are irrelevant, but I also know that the schemes are not working as well as the BJP claims, and this will be the deciding factor, I think.
Right. Thanks, Pragya.
Sorry, can I ask all the reporters one question? We have almost entirely ignored the fact that this election cycle is happening while we are in the midst of a global pandemic. Was this a pandemic that the central government at least handled, we can agree, very badly?
And so did the UP government.
And I think almost all state governments, with exceptions like Kerala, etc. Was this at all an issue? I know on the ground, like COVID wasn't a thing, but was it an issue?
Let me answer this question.
Please.
UP, the state which was worst when the second wave of COVID hit us. So I personally saw like 15-20 people who were known to me dying every day for a span of almost 2 or 3 weeks. So there was this big issue कि जिन टीचर्स की ड्यूटी लगी थी पंचायत पोल्स में बहुत करीबन 1600 टीचर की डेथ हुई थी. सो मैं उनकी लिस्ट निकाली. मैं जब मथुरा आया था मैं 20 टीचरों के घर पे वहां गया एंड देयर आंसर्स वर लाइक योगी जी तो अच्छा ही कर रहे थे, खराब तो अधिकारियों ने किया है. सो दिस वाज नॉट एन इशू. जिसका पति मरा है वो विडो बोल रही है नहीं नहीं हमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. So ये इशू बन ही नहीं पाया.
Have they paid out on insurance schemes though?
Because पंजाब में क्या हुआ कि जब ऑक्सीजन क्राइसिस हुआ तो there was this issue कि हम पाकिस्तान से नहीं ले सकते.
Anything?
Yeah, thing here, you know, I do feel that in Uttar Pradesh, where there is a high degree of poverty, there is a great deal of dependence on caste basis, people are not going to speak out their views very openly. a lot of the underprivileged people in UP will wait to see who is winning, go according to that, because there is complete dependence on the government for your Aadhaar card, for your house, for even this gas scheme, whether it works or not. For everything you depend on the government, and so you are not going to very easily say that you're going against the larger trend, even if you are extremely unhappy. And especially when a reporter comes and asks, they will put you in a strange situation of saying they like the government, and then they'll say, but we are also, not very happy with the schemes. So this I think the fear factor, which doesn't exist, say in Punjab.
कुछ चीजें ऐसी होती है ना कि आप देखो, जब when I was covering the छत्तीसगढ़ elections, तो बालाकोट स्ट्राइक हुआ था, तो इट मेड एन इम्पैक्ट कि नहीं, हम तो अब बीजेपी को वोट करेंगे, नेशनलिज्म वाला फैक्टर आ जाता है. वोटर्स आर ऑलवेज साइलेंट कि वो आप खुद नहीं बताओगे कि आप किसको वोट करने जा रहे हो. व्हेन यू स्टैंड इन फ्रंट ऑफ द ईवीएम मशीन, आपसे सबने बोला है कि आप इसको वोट करो, उसको वोट करो, वहां पे किसी और को आपने बटन दबा दिया, वोट हो गया, ठीक है. लेकिन इस बार का जो इलेक्शन था, जो इशू थे उसके लिए लोग ओपनली बोल रहे थे. अयोध्या में इंक्रोचमेंट वाला इशू ओपनली लोगों ने बोला, ठीक है. बनारस आप देख लीजिए, सबसे बड़ा एग्जांपल है आपके पास. नरेंद्र मोदी प्राइम मिनिस्टर को आके एक कैंडिडेट के लिए वहां पे रोड शो करना पड़ रहा है, बिकॉज नीलकंठ तिवारी के लिए वो इतने कमजोर थे.
Yeah, I want to take that to grace for a second, because in a state like Manipur 2017 में तो मतलब कोई नहीं था. इस बार सब आए, राहुल गांधी आए, अमित शाह आए, Nitin Gadkari took a helicopter into Ukhrul Grace, so he didn't get a chance to travel on that fantastic road. He should have remembered perhaps Atal Bihari Vajpayee's that 2003 trip from Dimapur to Kohima, or Kohima to Dimapur, whatever it was. How is this kind of level of campaigning, doing road shows and such like, what kind of impact is that going to have?
I don't think much, because we are still if you look at our per capita income, which is extremely low, we are the lowest in the Northeast, second lowest in the country, and that reflects, our status. And I think that is what is not reflected during the campaign, because so for observers, it completely contradicts what they are saying, because the 5 years of BJP rule have reduced us to this state where we have lost hope of and especially in the hill areas. Because even if you look at Manipur on average, then perhaps it will shadow the disparity between the valley and the hills. And I think it's important that we don't look at the average, and we look at this disparity within also, because Manipur has this distinct duality, even on all forms. Inside the assembly of 20 are from the hills, even though we are a permanent minority in terms of numbers within that. And in terms of our land laws, the tribals are very, very assertive of our land and our relationship with the land, not only with the land ownership, but also with our relationship with the land. So we have a different land law in the hills and in the valley, and the hills are 91% of the geographical area of the state, though we are only 42% of the total population. So, but if you look at the pace of development in the hills, it's amazing. Just to cite one example, in education, the spending of the last 4 years on education is 5.7 in the hill areas out of the total spending. So the policy of the state within the policy of the government within the state towards the hill population is apparent in these spendings. And if you look at this, facts and figures. So
sorry to interrupt. If I can just so is some of this kind of divide and majoritarian politics playing out in terms of solidifying support for the BJP, do you think? With the valley population, the Meitei population kind of consolidating behind the BJP?
The BJP has definitely ignored the hills by not tabling the hill area autonomous district council bill, which was supposed to improve this disparity. So they have definitely ignored the hill population, the 20 constituencies, because in terms of numbers, the 40 matters more than the 20. Yeah. So the interest of the 40 and the 20, when you look at it, then definitely you won the 40. But interestingly, BJP played another card. If you look at the press releases that cards come in, on the 23rd or 25th of February, the Kuki National Organization had openly said that they will support BJP because Amit Shah had come to Chorchandpur public ground and said that they're going to look to the settlement of Kuki political aspiration. That being the reason, like they have said that they're going to support BJP. So it is this promise of settling the political aspiration of the Kukis, which have wooed the surrendered militants of the Kuki, the Kuki community to support the BJP. So likewise for the Nagas, because we have an ongoing ceasefire with the GOI and the Naga, the NPF, the Naga People's Front, also have I was part of the government in the previous thing. So they have this, they play another game in the hills altogether. So despite all
this, sorry to cut you, we're running out of time, but we'll have you back at 3 to talk a little more in detail about all these issues, and I'll hand back to Pranjal for however he wants to close.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Grace, for giving us your time. Thanks a lot, Saurav, for joining us, and hopefully we'll again meet tomorrow and we'll take it forward and see how the results pan out. That was our grounded analysis for the Assembly elections 2022. The 5 states have gone for polls. The fate has been logged in the EVMs. It's an interesting election. It's a do or die battle for Samajwadi Party in Uttar Pradesh. It's a do and die battle for Congress in Punjab. I mean, if Congress loses Punjab, the exit poll says they're already losing Uttarakhand, and it might be a close fight in Goa. It also was an interesting election in Goa. I mean, the Congress candidates had to take a pledge of loyalty because last time most of their winning candidates switched to BJP after winning elections, and BJP, which was the second largest party, formed the government, and Congress, which was the single largest party, was sitting in the opposition. As Grace has pointed out, Manipur is also an interesting election, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll be covering election continuously for multiple lives. On 10th of March, please join us with different journalists who are going to join us from different states. Till then, keep watching NewsClick. Do watch show at 3 o'clock on the smaller states. Thank you. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Thank you.